let's say I import module, right? And I say print module.counter. What do you think it's going to print? It's going to print me, I want to run, it's going to run 0, right? It's going to run 0. Okay. And so what happens is the main file tries to access the counter variable. It's legal, and however, it can be unsafe, right? So what happens if you don't want this to be accessed by the module user? Well, we can have something called personal and private variables, right? We haven't really spoken about encapsulation before. That's coming in object-oriented programming. But that is a method of encapsulation. But here's a warning, however, Python has no like tools of allowing us to hide such variables from the eyes of the module user, right? So what Python allows us to do is only inform the user that the variable we can read it, but we should not modify it under any circumstances, and to do this, we write the variable that we are trying to say is private or something with a preceding underscore, right? Or it can be 2 underscores, right? So remember, this is just a convention. It's like a recommendation. The user can decide to obey or not obey, all right? So now let's go back to the 2 functions in the module. So they will evaluate the sum and the product of numbers collected in a list, right? So I think we've done that before, but let's do that. I'll show you how you do that. Okay, so let's think about it. Let's create that variable, those 2 functions. Okay, I'm going to make this 2. And then let's see what happens when we try and call it, right? It's still accessing it, right? So you can still access it, but don't change it, okay? I'm just gonna remove this one for now. And we're gonna create, what do you call it? We're going to create our 2 functions, okay? And to do that, I've created a private variable called counter, and I'm gonna say define sum1, and it's gonna take in a number list or a list of numbers. And then we're gonna use the global keyword. Remember the global keyword to modify our counter, right? And then what we're gonna do when this thing is, we're gonna increment the counter variable by 1. And to do that, we say counter, remember the shortcut, counter plus equals 1, right? And then we're gonna set the sum to 0. And then we're gonna call it a variable, let's say the sum, all right? I'm just laughing at the naming convention. I use the sum, but anyway, for elements in our num list, we are going to increment the sum, right, by the elements in the list, right? And we're going to say the sum plus equals the element, right, number in the list. And I see that, and then we're going to now, what we're going to do is at the end of the for loop, we're going to, let me just save that and make sure it's properly formatted, return the sum of all the elements, and that's not how you spell elements in the list, and we're going to return the sum. All right. Okay. Now that's the first function. Remember, the second function is to create one that calculates the product of all the numbers in our list. So prod1 and list, and then we're going to say we're going to use a global keyword as before, right? In counter, and just like before, we're going to increment. We're going to increment counter by 1, and I'm going to say that counter plus equals 1, and then we're going to assign that to a variable called prod, right? Assigned to prod variable just like before. However, in this instance, I can't set it to 0 because any number multiplied by 0 would be 0. Okay, so now for element, just like before, in the num list, and then we're going to say prod, and this time instead of saying plus, nope, we're going to say multiply equals the element. And when we're done, we're going to return prod, right? So there is our function, okay? And now what's going to happen is we're going to have a little safe check, right? So this is only going to run if it's always going to run, all right? Just ignore that. And that's what we're going to do, right? So we're going to say if name is main, right? Friends, just like before how we had it, I should have removed it. I prefer to be a module. However, let's rock. Okay. And then essentially it's just going to do a bit of test. And what it's going to do is my list is equals to, ooh, uh, okay. I haven't done list comprehensions for you before. So we're just going to do that. I wanted to write a list comprehension, but we can do that later. All right. We still have a lot to learn together. All right. So we're just going to do just a random set of numbers. I'm just going to print out the results of our function, and we say my list. Okay. And then we're going to print prod one my list. However, what we want to do some tests. So I want to make sure that this works. But before we can do that, I want us to actually, I'm just going to comment this out. I'm going to say, yeah, for element in my list, you're going to say, we have a number, the sum is 0, and then I am going to now say the sum plus equals element, and then I'm going to print out the sum. And I'm also going to say the prod. So I just want to make sure that this is equals to 1, and then we're going to say the prod that element. All right, and I'm going to say the prod. Okay, and then just going to run main.py, and those are two values that we're going to just copy and paste them here. So I want to ensure that this is true. I paste there and undo that. I want you and say, yeah, okay, cool. Now I'm just going to delete this and comment that out. All right. So there we go. Now let's use it in here. So we're going to say from module import sum1 and prod 1. Let's see if it works. Sometimes this thing gives a bit of, going to create zeros is equals to 0 for I in, well, okay, so I'm using a list comprehension. Okay, so I'm going to create a range, right? And I'm saying 5. So remember, the range is going to create a number of 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 5 numbers, right? And then what that is doing is going to say for I, right? I'm going to make it 0. So for every value, I'm going to start as a 0, and it's going to return a list of zeros. So I'm just going to print zeros for you so you can see. And there we go. That's how list comprehension works. And then I'm going to create one called ones. You can say 1 for I in range of 1. No, 5, right? And then from there, I'm going to say print someone, get it? If you don't, forget about it. All right. Print prod 1, and we're gonna say ones, and then just run the file. Let's see what we get. And there we go. What's happening there? Right. Oh. For 1 prod ones. That should not be 0. Why is that 0? Prod ones, 1. Let's look into our that. Oh, you see, that's why it's 0. I made a mistake, and I said it. You can't put mistakes happen. Anyway, can't make that one has to be 1 instead of 0. Run that, and we can see that that is just going to be 1 because 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 times 1. However, we can say from 0 to 20, and actually I want it from 1, and we can say 3 or 2, and I'm going to say 1, whatever I times I plus 3, okay, just a random, and then let's see what that's, wow, that's a massive number, so that's what we get, okay? So we see that that is working. We've created our own module and we're using it, okay. So let us continue, and just so from there, I showed you how to use the system path, right? So far we've been working as if this is we're always going to have this module in here. But what happened if you created it somewhere and you wanted to use it in another project, right? We will show you that in a python.systems.path, right? So to do that, I'm going to need to use this. I think I showed you this before, from sys import path, and good. I'm going to say path dot append. Right? I'm going to add something to it. I'm just going to say let's see if it works. Go back. I'm going to look for modules. Okay, so this would work if now I moved. See how Python this is now in a different file, right? So if I was to create another folder, and I'll say fund1, okay, and then I took main and I put it in fund1. Yes, do I want to move it? And I do that. All right, so now I'm going to go back one, and I'm going to look for fund, right? Because that's the name of our module path. From oh, okay. And then have I done that? So now I can't, you see, now I can't find it. So what I have to, so now that I've done that, I now have to paste this below so that it can now look for and find fund, right? And where's main.py? Still not finding it. And I can, now I'll just have to say import module, not module finder, import module. And now I'll have to be using module dot and module dot that, right? So now to do that, we still have that, but let's try and run it, see if it'll work. It can't find it. And it's saying can't open the file, fund, and then main. Why is that? 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 It can't find file. Okay. Okay. That is because I am in the wrong folder. So we go cd just a bit. Right? We in data times, and I go cd fund1. I just move my file and I say python main.py. Let's see. And there we go. Working. All right. So that's how you just, if you're not working on the same file, your module is another file, that's how you would do it. All right. So the reason why we've done this is because sometimes Python might what do you call it? But anyway, never mind. We don't have to do that because I did it this way. Some people do it that way, but it's fine. I'm just used to this method. Yeah, guys, thank you for watching this long video on Python modules. I appreciate it and wish you all the best. I will see you soon.